Namaste, everyone. How is everyone today? It's been a long time since we've done a live, and this is a special live stream for Ramana Maharshi's 100th. So I hope you're all well. And we're going to go into a lot of deep knowledge today. I see Finn's already in the room. How are you, Finn? Good to see you. Thank you, brother. Much appreciated. Much appreciated. Still getting used to the new studio and everything. All good. I hope you're all well. How is everyone? Say hello, Pavel. Nice to see you, my friend. Excellent. We got 10 in the room, 13 likes. Give us a thumbs up. Today, guys, as I said, a special live stream for everybody. And so it's Ramana's 144th Janti. So to pay respects to Ramana and give salutations, I'll just chant a quick verse from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. So if you can close your eyes and listen and pay respects as well. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamasa Gamaya Mrityoma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Namo Bhagavan Ramana Om Arunachala Shivaya. So I hope you guys are all well. Today we're going to get into a lot of Bhagavan's teachings, and we'll have a Q&A after that as well. And so Advaitic Oneness, good to see you, my friend. Len B, long time. Yes, it has been. UFO, nice to see you. So today in Bhagavan's teachings and what we're going to explore, first of all, I'll read a verse, 7 verses actually from the Ishvara Gita. I don't know who of you have read this. Leave a comment if you've read the Ishvara Gita. This is actually a beautiful translation by Andrew Nicholson. I mean, his introduction in this one is absolutely amazing. So I'll read a few verses from that, and then I'll read just a couple of verses from the Parayana. These are the poetic works of Ramana Maharshi. And so basically, I'll read just one, or actually 2 brief verses about his love for Arunachala and also the type of attitude we need to understand this deep knowledge, right? A lot of people will talk about what sort of attitude do we need. And as you guys probably know from listening and watching my channel a lot, you know exactly what attitude we need. And it's also in Buddhism and Taoism, that type of mentality as well. And then we'll get into the heart of Ramana's teachings. This is Be As You Are. This is edited by David Godman. And it's actually a wonderful book, wonderful book. So yes, good morning, everyone. Excellent. Finn. Yes, that's right, my friend. That's right. Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay. Tobin, how are you? Cameron, nice to see you. All right. So, as I said, Lord Shiva's song, Ishvara Gita, this is just to give you an idea of what the unmanifest Brahman is, right? So, this is a Shiva text. This is a Shiva text, so Shiva as a representation of Brahman. So this is an important text actually in South India as well. And we find this in the Puranas, so this in the Skanda Purana. So let me read just 7 brief verses to give you an understanding. So Lord Shiva said, "From the unmanifest came time, primeval matter, and the supreme spirit. The whole world was born from these 3. So the world consists of Brahman." Now, Brahman again, the ultimate reality. "It dwells in the world, enveloping everything, hands and feet everywhere, eyes, head, face, and ears everywhere. It appears to possess all qualities and all senses, yet is free from all them. Supporting all things, it is eternal bliss, the unmanifest, free from duality, without any object of comparison. Its range is beyond the means of knowledge. The abode of all things, supreme immortality, beyond mental construction or semblance, undivided yet appearing as divided. It is eternal, fixed, and unchanging. It is without qualities, the highest space. This is the knowledge the wise understand. It is the self of all beings. It is the external, the internal, the supreme. It is I, all pervading and calm, the highest Lord whose essence is knowledge. I, whose form is unmanifest, pervade this entire world. All beings dwell in me. He who knows this knows the Vedas. Now, that last line will come into play as we go further and further along here. So you'll understand that a little bit more. But I wanted to mention that to you so that you guys get an understanding of the Naguna Brahman aspect, right? Naguna Brahman here, meaning Brahman without quality. So Saguna Brahman is Brahman with qualities, right? So this manifest world we live in. So in the Ishtavara Gita, there's a focus on the unmanifest Brahman. And so, as you guys know, that like we speak a lot about that on the channel. Let's have a look who we got in the room. Yes, William, good to see you. Melissa, lovely, beautiful. Everyone say hello. If you're in there, give us a thumbs up. 26 in the room, beautiful. Nice to see you. Got 23 thumbs up. Thank you, Pavel. Yes, a beautiful verse, actually. And now I want to read to you, as I said, the Parayana, the poetic works of Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Parayana is actually what they chant at Ramana Ashram. So it's beautiful. Like when I'm in Tiruvannamalai, I'm usually at the ashram, usually around 5:15 in the morning, because there's chants and that are going on very early. There's actually a part of the ashram, it's very beautiful, where there's this symbiosis between the men and the women who chant back and forth, and then at the end, there's a harmony where everyone comes into chorus. It's just a beautiful experience. And then after that, straight after that, well, not just straight after that, but you can go into the main hall, and there's actually the Brahmins will chant the Parayana and actually verses of the Vedas. So you got to remember that this poetic works here. Like a lot of people say, oh, Ramana, he didn't do anything. He just sat around. Well, he translated all of these into Tamil, and then they've been translated into English. And these are some of the greatest texts that you'll ever find in here. And he actually extracts a lot of the important verses of a lot of longer texts that are very laborsome. Like I've read many texts, right? And it can be very laborsome to read, say, the entire Yoga Vashishta. But then when you see Bhagavan, he extracts the important verses of the Yoga Vashishta and he puts it in here, right? And so, yeah, I mean, we're talking about Ramana here. Doesn't get much better or higher understanding of this knowledge than how he understood it. So in this one, we're going to look at just, first of all, his love of Arunachala, right? This is the necklet of the 9 gems. And so I'm just going to read you 2 verses from this, right? And it gives you an idea of his love for Arunachala and also what Arunachala symbolizes. Like that's why I intentionally read those first 7 chapters of the Ishvara Gita. Now, Shaivas in the north would say, this relates to the Ganga as well. And look, yes, each to their own, right? So you have the northern Shaivas, the southern Shaivas, and like the northern Shaivas would say Kailash is the physical manifestation of Shiva, and the southern Shaivas in Tamil Nadu would say that Arunachala is like the Kailash of the south. So what to say? So anyway, these first 2 verses of the necklet of the 9 gems. Although Shiva is motionless by nature, he dances before the mother Shakti, who stands still in the court of Chidambaram. But know that in Arunachala, he stands in his tower grandeur, and she withdraws there into his unmoving self. When one inquires into the meaning of Arunachala, which is lustrous like red gold and bestows liberation, one finds that the word Aruna means set Chit Ananda, the identity of the individual self and the supreme self, according to the Mahavakya that thou art. And that the word achala means perfection. And so what Ramana translated here is Arunachala basically means the identity of the Atman, the individual self, with the Brahman, the supreme self, according to the Mahavakya, Tattvamasi, that thou art. And that chala means the perfection. So the perfection of the Atman. And so in India, you actually see, in the south, you actually see the southern Shaivas who have the tradition of the Shaiva Siddhanta, right? And so you got the Shaiva Siddhanta, and in that tradition, the Siddhas are the ones who have the perfected consciousness. And so this is a common theme that you'll see in a lot of, especially Tamil Nadu philosophy and spiritual traditions. And so in the first part, it's really interesting, right? Shiva, the motionless by nature, he dances before the Shakti, before Mother Shakti, right? Shakti, again, is the Saguna Brahman level Shakti. The power of Shakti is this world that we live in, right? And so there's two different ways to look at this, because if we look at it strictly from an Advaita Vedanta perspective, the reality itself is purely Maya, is illusion, right? And then if you look at it from an integral Advaita perspective, the world is Shakti. And so that means that that Brahman is immanent within all reality, but at the same time transcends it. And so there's a lot of other integral Advaita traditions, such as Taoism, such as Vajrayana Buddhism, that speak about this. Look, in some sense, Shankara is actually, when you read the Mandukya Upanishad Kataka, for example, he is hinting at, through the measurement of Maya, that there is this integral oneness, so to speak. And there, if you look at the teachings of Swami Vivekananda, and there are some correlations there with Shankara in both of the Advaita and the integral oneness approach. But Swami Vivekananda would say that he's more of an integral Advaitin because of Sri Ramana Krishna followed what we would call Vijnana Vedanta, which is, again, an integral Advaita. And Shankara would say that he is strictly a non-dualist, but when you read the text, you actually see that there's a little bit either or. There's a flip-flop between both. So it's not a strict departure in philosophy, actually. And so that's going to make up actually a future book that I write. I'm going to write a book about the teachings of integral Advaita. And so I hope you guys are excited about that. And as I've mentioned many times before, my new book on Taoism still is not published. So I will I'll let everyone know about that. Anyway, the second part I said to you, I was going to read was the attitude we need in understanding these teachings. Even everything that I speak about on the channel, right? This is the type of attitude we need as sincere spiritual aspirants to understand this knowledge. I see a lot of people in the comment section arguing about this and that, and a lot of semantics a lot of the time. And a lot of us are not. And look, this is a minority in the comment section too. Most of you are brilliant, obviously, and understand this knowledge and really live by it and are enthusiastic about it. But there is a small portion that get into this analytical game of trying to split the atom without seeing intuitively. And when you understand Eastern spirituality and philosophy, it's more of an intuitive response to understanding these. You can think about them analytically, but there has to be something within you that understands it. A lot of esoteric teachers would say that was like what the divine organ is. Sometimes it's developed more in some individuals rather than others. And look, we'll speak about that in a second, because in the first part of Ramana's teachings and Be As You Are, there's a discussion with David Godman about 3 types of spiritual aspirants, which I'll mention in a second. And so these 5 verses I'm about to read to you is from the Divai Colotterum. So, and this is Ramana's translation. And so this is a spirit we need to come to understand this great knowledge. Maintain a neutral attitude towards all things. Do not be infatuated with anything. Maintain equanimity, whether happy or suffering. Be the same to friends and enemies. Treat alike a shard of clay pot and a piece of gold. A yogi should not be swayed by desires or yield to gratifying the senses and should be free from the delusion of regarding things as mine. He should revel in the self alone, free from fear and desire. Equanimity must always be maintained, whether one is praised or slandered. Equal conduct must be observed towards all creatures, and there should be no discrimination between the self and the non self. Worldly associations and quarrels should be avoided. Even spiritual disputations should be indulged in, whether good or bad. Jealousy, slander, pomp, passion, envy, love, anger, fear, and misery should all disappear gradually and entirely. If a man is free from all the pairs of opposites and always lives in solitude established in himself alone, he gains perfect wisdom even while in the present body and shines forth with great effulgence. I love these 5 verses from the Divaikolottaram, which is in the Parayana, translated by Bhagavan himself. And I think that that's probably one of the core things, right? Is keeping that neutral attitude towards life and understanding that right and wrong, good and bad, in most cases are from our own subjective viewpoint, from our own conditioning. We're not talking about how we act instinctively here, like towards certain things, like it, Mencius in the Mencius story when he tries to illustrate that we're fundamentally good and that the child is about to fall into the well, and he asks his student actually, like, what is the feeling you have to the child, and obviously we all have this pull that we need to make sure that that child doesn't fall into the well. And so Bhagavan's not really talking about that sort of intuitive goodness or that we have actually, And again, Advaita Vedanta, Buddhism, and Taoism all come, and look, Hinduism in its totality comes from the perspective that we're not beasts from birth. The idea of the beast from birth comes from other religions and other parts of the world. That's where you had sin and so forth and so on. And so that doesn't relate to the Eastern traditions at all, because the Eastern traditions come from the perspective that we are fundamentally good, but we become toxic and influenced by the environments that we find ourselves in. And so there's many texts on that. And look, you guys know that I've been speaking to you guys about that for years. And so you're probably sick of me speaking about it. But at the same time, I hope that those 5 verses make sense, because that's the type of spirit we need, right? When we try to understand the great knowledge. And as Ramana said in this one, a yogi should not be swayed by desires or yield to gratifying the senses and should be free from the delusion of regarding things as mine. Now, I always think of my audience in that sense as the modern yogis, right? So that's why I love and appreciate all of you. So so that's what I wanted to read that to give you kind of the perspective of like what we were talking about before, right? So when I was mentioning actually the Ishvara Gita, the 7 verses, that to understand that sort of unmanifest Naguna Brahman, the Shiva without qualities, Brahman without qualities, we need to have that neutral attitude. We need to keep our mind completely open in some sense, not intentionally too. Like this is another focus in Vajrayana Buddhism, where we find the teachings of Dzogchen, where you have the mentality of maintaining total presence, which is rigpa in Sanskrit, which when you hold that complete presence, you develop what is called the contemplative mind. So you see the pure emptiness of actually thoughts. And shunyata in that sense, it really means not emptiness, but empty cognizance. And so that's what a lot of people don't understand. It means empty cognizance. A lot of people, when they read Buddhism, they think, oh, emptiness, everything's empty. This is empty. The wall is empty and so forth and so on. No, it means empty cognizance. So in Vajrayana Buddhism, you have this, what is known as Dhammadhatu, right? So Dhammadhatu is the fundamental origin of existence, that space consciousness that we could relate to Uchi in Taoism or Nirguna Brahman and Vedanta. And it's when we come into harmony with Rigpa, you become actually a reflection of Dhammadhatu, because you become a reflection of the space of consciousness, and things are just happening within the mind, right? And without any awareness, we often wander with the mind, or we wander with our beliefs, and we wander with this and that, which is an important part of all of these traditions. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get into this, and the things I'm going to read about in Be As You Are, the teachings of Bhagawan, is, as I said first, the three type of spiritual aspirants. We're going to talk about the nature of self-realization, the aid of a guru, dealing with desires, is the world an illusion, and is the world created for happiness or misery? And so one of the things I'm first going to say to you guys before I get into that is that when people talk about Ramana Maharshi's teachings, a lot of people talk about self-inquiry, right? They talk about Atma Vicharya. And so when you've read the transcripts of Bhagawan, when you understand his teachings, he recommended Atma Vicharya, self-inquiry. So this is the who am I, right? But the real translation should be what am I, because who implies a person. And so when he recommended Atma Vicharya as a way to sort of till the soil in your mind to understand the Brahma Vidya, because when people came to Bhagavan, they saw that he was an enlightened being, and they were thinking like, what, how do I attain this? Like, again, I is in the way here, but we don't want to split the atom again. But how do I become a knower of Brahman? This is what the Brahma Vidya is, right? The knowledge of Brahman, or Brahmagyana, if you want, the wisdom of Brahman. And so when they came to him and they could feel the power of his silence, they could feel the power when he would speak, or they could feel his presence in general, they always inquired, like, how do I get this? And for Ramana, it was like, if you can't hear this music, right? Like, like, for example, with classical music, some people hate classical music, but if you can hear classical music and you can understand it, then there's something there. And for Bhagavan, it was much like that. He could not explain this absorption that he has in Brahman, right? There's not really any words to do it, but what he could offer as a preliminary practice to try and abide in that was Atma Vicharya. Now, what's interesting in the modern day, I don't know how many of you guys actually watch other teachers and this and that, but there's a lot of neo-Advaita teachers around, right? So a lot of neo-Advaita teachers don't stick to tradition. They've never learned the Brahma Vidya. They've never even read the great texts, but they know who am I by Ramana, right? And so they run with this idea of who am I, and then their satsangs reflect this, where they're just constantly in the inquiry. It becomes a bit of a head case, right? And so then you find the devotees of these people sitting like, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? It's on repeat, right? And so this is a big problem. This is actually not what Ramana wanted, obviously. He wanted us to obviously practice Atma Vicharya, self-inquiry, if we weren't at that stage of understanding that Atman is Brahman, right? And so a lot of these neo-Advaita teachers stay in the inquiry, but they're not focused on the beyond, on the Brahma Vidya, on the Brahma Gyan. They're not focused on that. They're focused on just stay in the inquiry. Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? And what happens is as I said, a lot of devotees just go crazy, because it's not natural just to be sitting around all day going, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? Because what happens is the ego starts thinking about itself. It starts asking the question, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? And then it associates some sort of attainment with itself. And then you have people walking around saying that they're an enlightened being and so forth and so on. And no, that's not how it works, because no one can claim that they are enlightened. No one can claim that they're enlightened, because the one that claims it is the ego itself. If you've disappeared, if the jiva, the ego persona system has evaporated and disappeared, all that is left is the it's important, right? Palmy, nice to see you. Excellent. Alethea, good to see you. Nice to see you. Excellent. Perma Charles, Satchidananda, yes. Ribu Gita, one of the best texts that you'll ever read. Pavel, yeah, they are focused on the object of knowledge instead of stepping out of themselves. That's right. It's true. Advaitik, Ramana Maharshi is eternal. He was never born, never died. He's one with us. Well, that's exactly when Ramana was dying, and his devotees were upset. They were crying, like, where are you? Like, what are we going to do? What can we do? Where are you going to go? And he's like, where can I go? I'm that. Where can I go if I've always been? Now, that's not Ramana as the person speaking. That's the ultimate expression of reality. And so all of the great saints and seers and sages of yesteryear who merged in Brahman, the reason why they are respected is because they merged with that. And the person Venkataraman Aya, who was Ramana from his birth, or what we would call the Rupakaya in Buddhism, was just the physical form for the Dhammakaya to happen, the enlightened awakening, which happened when Ramana was 16. And so, as I said, I'm going to first mention to you the three types of spiritual aspirants. And so this is from David Godman, actually. This is David Godman's words before we get into the Q&A, the transcript of the first part, the nature of self-realization. Susan, good to see you. Nice to see you. Mello, beautiful. Greetings. Belgium. Love it. So Sri Ramana occasionally indicated that there were three classes of spiritual aspirants. The most advanced realize the self, Atman, as soon as they are told about its nature. Those in the second class need to reflect on it for some time before self-awareness becomes firmly established. Those in the third category are less fortunate, since they usually need many years of intensive spiritual practice to achieve the goal of self-realization. Sri Ramana sometimes used a metaphor of combustion to describe the three levels. Gunpowder ignites with a single spark. Charcoal needs the application of heat for a short time, and wet coal needs to dry out and heat up over a long period of time before it will begin to burn. For the benefit of those in the top two categories, Sri Ramana taught that the self alone exists and that it can be directly and consciously experienced merely by ceasing to pay attention to the wrong ideas we have about ourselves. These wrong ideas he collectively called the not self, since they are an imaginary accretion of wrong notions and misperceptions which effectively veil the true experience of the real self. The principal misperception is the idea that the self, Atman, is limited to the body and the mind. As soon as one ceases to imagine that one is an individual person inhabiting a particular body, the whole superstructure of wrong ideas collapses and is replaced by a conscious and permanent awareness of the real self, the Atman. At this level of the teaching, there is no question of effort or practice. All that is required is an understanding that the self is not a goal to be attained. It is merely the awareness that prevails when all the limiting ideas about the not self have been discarded. As I said, these are the words from David Godman speaking about this chapter 2 of Ramana's teachings. Hi, Diane. Good to see you. Welcome. And so in David sets this out because in this chapter, Ramana is asked about self-realization, like because okay, so there's two the first two ones, right? When he uses combustion, right? So we have the gunpowder ignites with a single spark. So I could say to you, you are that, you are Atman, and boom, you're already there. Tatvamasi. This makes sense to you completely. And then the second one, charcoal needs the application of heat for a short time, right? So there's a need for probably a little bit of sadhana, right? A little bit of practice, a little bit of study, a little bit of understanding. And then the third aspect, which many of us probably fall into, is the wet coal needs to dry out and heat up over a long period of time before it will begin to burn. Now that's where one needs to, dedicate their life to, well, not dedicate their life. We all dedicate our life to the spiritual path, but dedicate a certain period of time for intense sadhana. So intense spiritual practice, probably isolation, good to be a recluse for a while and this and that, to try and eliminate a lot of the not self, as Ramana said, a lot of wrong thinking and a lot of subjective thinking about ourselves, right? Like, so a lot of the problem with spirituality in the modern day is because individuality is constantly promoted all throughout the world, even though Eastern cultures aren't individualistic in their nature, but they are slowly becoming like that, is people ruminate on themselves. They start to think about themselves all the time. And this, unfortunately, is why Westerners have an urge to say that they're enlightened because they come from an individualistic culture and they think they are the one that's going to be enlightened. It's the grace of Shiva. It truly is the grace of Shiva that touches your heart. Some people realize it straight away, like Bhagavan, or some people take many years. We could even look at Patanjali, right, as the founding father of yoga. When he had the 8 limbs of yoga, maybe this was Patanjali being in the third category. Now, again, like I said, these 3 categories are not like one is better than the other. It's just that we all have different circumstances in life. We all come from different upbringings. We all are blessed with certain different cards and privileges than other people. But that's not supposed to deter you from the path. You're not supposed to play the victim in all of this. I know that's in vogue these days, right? And I remember one teacher said to me when we were sitting around satsang, is that obviously the great blessing is for someone to be born into a yogi's family, right? And so not many of us can say that we were born into a yogi's family. But I'm sure that all of your parents were exactly where you needed to be, and they were loving people in and of themselves. I know my parents were, but my parents were pretty far from removed from the spiritual sphere because they lived in a different time and they had different circumstances, right? So in response to these 3 different types of spiritual people, spiritual aspirants, I'll read to you this little dialogue between Ramana and a devotee from this Be As You Are. I don't know who has read this, but it's must reading. John, good to see you, my friend. Johnsky, love it. Everywhere there's wet coal these days. Right on. Thomas, 66 people. Thank you, brother. 72 at the moment. For those of you who want to see this live stream get out to more people, make sure you hit the thumbs up right now. It just helps the people who are really interested in this knowledge to find this live stream, you could say. So let me begin the dialogue, right? So we have the devotee says to Ramana, how can I attain self-realization? This is a very generic, very practical inquiry. Ramana says, realization is nothing to be gained afresh. It is already there. All that is necessary is to get rid of the thought, I have not realized. See, again, Ramana throws it on its head. He continues, stillness or peace is realization, shanti. There is no moment when the self is not, the Atman here. So long as there is doubt or the feeling of non-realization, the attempt should be made to rid oneself of these thoughts. They are due to the identification of the self with the not self. When the not self disappears, the self alone remains. To make room, it is enough that objects be removed. Room is not brought in from elsewhere. And so the devotee follows up. Since realization is not possible without vasana kishaya, now vasana kishaya is the destruction of mental tendencies. How am I to realize that state in which the tendencies are effectively destroyed? And Ramana says, you are in that state now. The devotee replies, does it mean that by holding on to the self, the vasanas, the mental tendencies, should be destroyed as and when they emerge? Ramana replies, they will themselves be destroyed if you remain as you are. The devotee asks, how shall I reach the self? Ramana says, there is no reaching the self. If self were to be reached, it would mean that the self is not here and now, and that is yet to be obtained. What is got afresh will be lost, will also be lost. So it will be impermanent. What is not permanent is not worth striving for. So I say the self is not reached. You are the self. You are already that. The fact is, you are ignorant of your blissful state. Ignorance supervenes and draws a veil over the pure self, which is blissful. Attempts are directed only to remove the veil of ignorance, which is merely wrong knowledge. The wrong knowledge is the false identification of the self with the body and the mind. This false identification must go, and then the self alone remains. Therefore, realization is for everyone. Realization makes no difference between the aspirants. This very doubt whether you can realize and the notion I have not realized are themselves the obstacles. Be free from these obstacles also. The devotee follows up. How long does it take to reach mukti, liberation? Mukti here is synonymous for also moksha as well. Mukti is not to be gained in the future. It is there forever, here and now. That's what Ramana said. And so then the devotee follows up, I agree, but I do not experience it. Ramana says, the experience is here and now. One cannot deny one's own self. And then the devotee says, that means existence and not happiness. Ramana says, existence is the same as happiness, and happiness is the same as being. The word mukti is so provoking. Why should one seek it? One believes that there is bondage and therefore seeks liberation. But the fact is that there is no bondage, but only liberation. Why call it by a name and seek it? And then the devotee follows up, true, but we are ignorant. Ramana says, only remove ignorance. That is all there is to be done. All questions relating to mukti are inadmissible. Mukti means real release from bondage, which implies the present existence of bondage. There is no bondage, and therefore no mukti. I love that one. And so that's something for us to think about, right? If we are already eternally that, we are the Atman, which is Brahman. We are that undifferentiated consciousness. But the persona system veils it, right? So we've got this veil and we can't see reality aright. We can't see it in its true place. But once we understand, as we get to the, let's say, the state of consciousness of a Jivan Mukta like Ramana, then you understand that there is no bondage and therefore no Mukti either, because Mukti is related to the persona system. I want release from bondage. So it's from something, right? But you're already that. And Ramana keeps reminding people, you're already that. You keeps telling me this story about who you are, and the story is a fiction story. It's not a real story. And so Ramana is not saying that in the sense that you don't exist, that you don't have obligations, that you don't have social duty. He's saying it from the deepest perspective that if you don't know who you truly are at the depth, then it's difficult to function in this world because you'll always suffer because you'll be a victim of who you think you are, right? And so John Tar, good to see you, my friend. Nice to see you. Non-duality, good to see you, my friend. Yes, be as you are. Ian, nice to see you. Ella, it's be as you are. Anek, yes, nice to see you. Earlier we spoke about, if you want to go back and watch the start, we the warmed up with the Ishvara Gita to understand this Naguna Brahman aspect of Shiva that Ramana talks about all the time, and also the Parayana, so the poetic works of Ramana, which I briefly talked about Ramana's love for Arunachala and the attitude required to understand these teachings, and also a lot of the teachings that I speak about on the channel. So in relating to that, when we go after that, relating to self-realization, that's right, Pavel. Basically, yes, Ramana is trying to tell his devotee that he does not know. Well, there's the ignorance, right? So Ramana mentions ignorance, and a lot of people get this wrong. It's the ignorance is the ignorance of Brahman, right? It's not ordinary ignorance, like, I can ignore all of you guys here. So it's the ignorance of Brahman. So it's the ignorance that our fundamental nature is fundamentally non-dual pure consciousness, and we've kind of turned our we have turned away in it inadvertently, because as we've all endured this conditioning process, as we've lived this life, we begin to have society reinforce we are this person, and then we reinforce that idea that we are this person as well. Now, there's nothing we can say inherently wrong with that person, because that person is an interface with reality, right? The aham, the ego, the amkara is an interface with the reality. But the problem is we kind of associate with that personality, overly associate, as if it's permanent and lasting. And this is where the teachings of Chuangzi come into play from Taoism, the great Tao sage, where he says that a lot of people are attached to their roles as a person. And so a lot of the time when that role is taken away from us as an individual, then we start to feel uncomfortable, because that built, our personality. Oh, I was a garbage man, right? And so I built my whole personality as a garbage man. Once that job is taken away, they're suffering, because for whatever reason, I associated with the role, and I thought the role was myself, and I forgot that all roles are played. And that's Zhuangzi's point, and that's what Ramana's point too, is that as people, all roles are played, right? And so it's the belief in the identity that obstructs the realization. So we believe we're this person here, and as all of the great texts speak about, it's often only when we're on our deathbed that we realize that the game is coming to an end, and we can't hold on to ourselves anymore from that perspective. So in relation to what Ramana was saying to the devotee, next we'll talk about the aid of the guru, right? And guys, remember, stick around. Once we get through all of this, we'll have Q&A, and I'll speak to you about a lot of things that are coming in the future. And remember that the replay of this live stream will be exclusive on Patreon for Patreon members. So I will leave it up for an hour after the live stream concludes, but it will be exclusive to Patreon. So if you want to join the Shanti Sangha on Patreon and see what's happening over there and support my work in the channel and just have a good time, then make sure you head on over. So the devotee follows up, not exactly straight after, but with a similar question, right? Where it says, there must be something that I can do to reach this state, right? So the devotee is confused about this. Like Ramana keeps telling the devotee, look, this is who you are. Like, we're fundamentally this. The obstacle is that we think it's somewhere to search for. We think it's a goal or a destination to get to. This is the crux of my book, Enlightenment Now, right? The idea that enlightenment is only ever present in this reality, but it's our time-bound ego that kind of gets in the way and kind of turns spiritual knowledge into something where we need to attain something, or we need to, have success, spiritual success, or whatnot. And so Ramana follows up with that question. It says the conception that there is a goal and a path to it is wrong. We are the goal or peace always. To get rid of the notion that we are not peace is all that is required. And then the devotee says, all books say that the guidance of a guru is necessary. And Ramana has an interesting reply to this. A lot of people have a nervous reaction about the idea of a guru in the modern day, right? Because we have become an individualistic culture, deference is something that gets kind of put on the back burner. And so once deference gets put on the back burner, what's one of the main qualities that humans have that just gets destroyed? Humility. And so the answer here, Ramana says, the guru will say only what I'm saying now. He will not give you anything you have not already got. It is impossible for anyone to get what he has not got already. Even if he gets any such thing, it will go as it came. What comes will also go. What always is will alone remain. The guru cannot give you anything new, which you don't already have. Removal of the notion that we have not realized the self is all that is required. We are always the self, only we don't realize it. We go around and round in search of Atman, self, saying, where is Atman? Where is it? Till at last, the dawn of Jnana Dristi. Now, Jnana Dristi means the vision of knowledge. Now, here, the vision of knowledge is the knowledge of Brahman. So the dawn of Jnana Dristi is reached, and we say, this Atman, this is me. We should acquire that vision. When once that vision is reached, there will be no attachments, even if one mixes with the world and moves about in it. When once you put on shoes, your feet do not feel the pain of walking on any number of stones or thorns on the way. You walk about without fear or care, even if there are mountains on the way. In the same way, everything will be natural to those who have attained Jnana-Drishti. What is there apart from one's own self? And then the devotee follows up. The natural state can be known only after all this worldly vision subsides. But how is it to subside? Again, asking how to reach it. How do I reach it? The penny hasn't dropped here, right? And this is one of the curiosities that Zhuangzi also has about humanity. Because when he talks about Xiao Yao Yu means free and easy wandering. It's a state of enlightenment, state of consciousness where one moves through the world, but it's not stuck to any aspect of it. Not even stuck to the idea of the spiritual concepts. And so it's like the Japanese word unsui. So unsui in Japanese, this spiritual term that we find in Zen Buddhism, means to drift like a cloud and flow like water. So that's what the enlightened mind is, right? Is to drift like a cloud and flow like water, where the mind is not stuck on anything. It's not stuck anywhere. It just, you move through life, and from Zhuangzi's perspective, you move effortlessly with the transformations of life. But you also know how to act immediately and appropriately to each and every situation, because you don't have all of this conditioning and belief system that makes you hesitant or makes you feel like you need to interfere with reality, right? When you have hesitancy or you feel like you need to interfere, it means the jiva is still at play. And so, as I said, the devotee is asking about, how does it subside, this worldly stuff that we have going on in our head. And Bhagavan says, if the mind subsides, the whole world subsides. Mind is the cause of all this. If that subsides, the natural state presents itself. The self proclaims itself at all times as I. It is the self luminous. It is here. All this is that. We are in that only. Being in it, why search for it? The ancients say, making the vision absorbed in jnana, one sees the world as Brahman. I love that exchange there, where it kind of began with the, if you could say, Ramana's way of saying that, okay, the guru is essential sometimes, but at the same time, the guru won't teach you anything that you already don't know because you're already the Atman. you already know you're that, but you believe that you're this person. And so in that sense, like the guru, if we translate, that means a dispeller of ignorance. Guru means a dispeller of ignorance. And so a teacher like that is supposed to dispel ignorance. And here, again, the ignorance of Brahman. And so that's the importance of a guru. Now, there are many things we could say about the modern guru culture in the 21st century, but we won't go there. For everyone who is here and is on my channel are invested in the great teachings, I assume. And so that's what we do. Lusne, nice to see you. Excellent, guys. Beautiful. Guys, 75 in the room, only 65 likes. Come on, let's get it to 100 and make sure that this live stream gets to the people that need to see it. Okay, so the next part I want to speak to you about Ramana's teachings. As you can see, there's plenty in here, but I kind of highlighted a few things that I thought you guys might find interesting. The next part is like dealing with desires, right? So a lot of people make a lot about desires in this day and age. And as you guys know, I've made plenty of videos on desires, not only from the perspective of the Ashtavakra Gita and the Avadhuta Gita. I've made videos from the Taoist perspective where Lao Tzu is explaining the desires of the belly and the desires of the mind. And I'll mention that after this exchange, because I think it's very poignant and sort of gives context to Ramana's reply to the devotee here. And so the devotee says to Ramana, what is the best way of dealing with desires and vasanas with a view to getting rid of them, satisfying them, or suppressing them? See, again, the inquiry is very practical, and there's nothing wrong with that per se, because these type of practical questions evoke a deeper response from Ramana. And so Ramana replies, if a desire can be got rid of by satisfying it, there will be no harm in satisfying such a desire. But desires generally are not eradicated by satisfaction. Trying to root them out that way is like trying to quench a fire by pouring inflammable spirits on it. At the same time, the proper remedy is not forcible suppression, since such suppression is bound to react sooner or later into a forceful surging up of desires with undesirable consequences. The proper way to get rid of a desire is to find out who gets the desire, what is its source. When this is found, the desire is rooted out and it will never again emerge or grow. Small desires, such as the desire to eat, drink, sleep, and attend to calls of nature, though these may also be classed among desires, you can safely satisfy. They will not implant vasanas in your mind, necessitating further birth. Those activities are necessary to carry on life and are not likely to develop or leave behind vasanas or tendencies. As a general rule, therefore, there is no harm in satisfying a desire where the satisfaction will not lead to further desires by creating vasanas in the mind. And so that the aspirant follows up. In the practice of meditation, are there any signs in the realm of subjective experience which will indicate the aspirant's progress towards self realization? Ramana says the degree of freedom from unwanted thoughts and the degree of concentration on a single thought are the measures to gauge the progress. So again, Ramana throws the sort of linear, practical ways that we see desires and this knowledge on its head, because if you understand the four Mahavakyas, right? So I've got one Mahavakya here, and I don't know if you guys know the four Mahavakyas, but they are what build the whole ethos of Sanatana Dharma Hinduism. And it goes back to the Upanishads and the Vedas. So obviously you have Tattvamasi, which is thou art that. You have Aham Brahmasmi. Now, Aham Brahmasmi, a lot of people translate as I am Brahman, right? But really it is I am Brahman without the I, because the I is gone. The next one is Pragyanam Brahma. Now, Pragyanam Brahma is all is consciousness, right? Everything is consciousness. And then you have I am Atma Brahma. So I am Atma Brahma means Atman is Brahma. So these are the four Mahavakyas. And in the future, I will do a video on each Mahavakya. Now, Mahavakya means, Maha means great, Vakya means saying or utterance. So these are the four great sayings that actually build a lot of the philosophy that we're talking. Well, they do basically build the philosophy that we're talking about today. Back in the times of the rishis, they didn't need to read a whole book. They just said 4 statements, and then that was it. And so when we talk about desires here, Ramana makes a lot of good points, because there's an interesting phenomenon where you see people in the modern day who probably aren't familiar with Vedic culture, who come maybe from the West or come from somewhere else, maybe South America or Africa and this and that. And then the people get introduced to non-dualism without any sort of understanding of the deeper tenets of the Brahma Vidya, the knowledge of Brahman, and the great text, right? And so then you get this tendency of the non-dual police. And so you guys have probably experienced this online, where you might just say something which is very innocent, maybe in the comment section, but then the non-dual police will come and, hey, this is what it means, and everybody knows. But that also relates a lot to desires, right? Because I've seen some of these non-dual police will say, like, if someone desires food, for example, so you might desire pizza. And look, I always mention pizza because I love pizza. Who doesn't like pizza, right? And so, you're still a victim of your desire. And it's like, no. Like, it, again, sometimes this knowledge has to be in the right hands, and you have to understand it from its proper context. And why I mentioned Lao Tzu before is because Lao Tzu, to give this context, had a philosophy of the desires of the eye and the desires of the belly. Now, the desires of the belly are obviously the desires, natural desires, right? So you must sleep, you must eat, you must quench your thirst. Maybe you want to have sex, natural things, right? Natural things that don't need to be overly analyzed. I am hungry, I eat. It's like Lin Chi's verse in the Great Zen text, where Lin Chi said, what are you talking about? When hungry, eat. When tired, sleep. Like, it's not rocket science. Following the way of nature is not rocket science, but we try to, again, split the atom, and we try and turn it into some sort of scientific endeavor without thinking intuitively about these teachings. Again, what Ramana would speak about, and also what Zhuangzi would speak about. Zhuangzi is constantly talking about the intuitive experience. Whereas there's a story in the Zhuangzi where Zhuangzi sees the two fish dancing, right, in the water, and he's with his friend. And he's like, the fish are happy. You know what his friend said? His friend's a classic non-dual cop. His friend goes, how do you know they are happy? And Zhuangzi, being Zhuangzi, being humorous, how do you know I don't know they are happy? And so you have this constant debate, right? It's not a debate. The thing is that his friend has lost touch with the intuitive aspect of reality. You don't have to analyze whether the fish are happy. You can see that the fish are happy. You know when your dog is sprinting around the yard and chasing its tail, it's having a wonderful time. No one ever has walked up and said, that dog's having a terrible day. You don't need to do that. You know it. And so Zhuangzi is trying to reinforce we know certain things about the world where we don't have to split the atom, right? And so when that comes to the desires of the belly, from Lao Tzu's perspective, we don't have to split the atom, right? We know when we're hungry. We know when we're thirsty. We know when we want to go for a walk. We want to experience the sun. We want to get the hell away from these screens, So we don't need to be told that. We intuitively know when to do that. But to contrast the desires of the belly, as Lao Tzu says, is the desires of the eye. And these are the desires that they speak about in Eastern traditions and what Ramana is speaking about, the devotee here. And these are the artificial desires. These are the artificial desires built on whatever culture and society says is acceptable. So it's an external perspective, right? Hunger comes here. The urge for sex comes here. Everything comes from within here. Sure, there may be some suggestions from the outside, right? You might not like Burger King, but there's constant ad of Burger King, and then you feel like eating Burger King. Okay, we're talking again. We don't want to split the atom, but the artificial desires are those that come from the external world, from society and culture. And so think of Madison Avenue, right? Think of the advertising industry. Think about why someone is dressed up really strange and this and that. Why did they dress like that? Well, they were influenced by by the desires of the eye, by those artificial desires. Unfortunately, in the modern world, majority of the world, I would say, is driven by the desires of the eye. Trying to have fame, have wealth, have success, all based on what they perceive of in their own mind. So they cook it up in their own mind. They have an idea of what wealthy is, of what fame is, and what success is. And then you could share that view with someone else, and someone else will have a different perspective. It's not like a universal type of idea. It's like when we look at morality, right? Morality itself is not universal. Different cultures and different belief systems have different perspectives of morality. And when we look at the non-dualist traditions are amoral because morality implies a this and that. It doesn't mean that you don't do good in the world. It just means, again, that you're driven by the desires of the belly, your fundamental goodness that you don't need to be told to be good. You know inherently that you are good, but it's the world around you that makes you, in some sense, act in a way that is out of accord with who you truly are. Michael, good to see you. No likes or dislikes, but a preference for pizza. Piotr, nice to see you. See, very good. Beautiful desire thoughts. Love it. Good to see you all here. 69 in the room, 76 likes. Let's get to 100 likes. Beautiful. Okay. So that's desires done. Let's have a look. Now we're getting into more of, let's say, the non-personal aspects of Bhagavan's teachings, which are actually, we can say the higher teachings. So we've spoke about the nature of realization, the aid of a guru, dealing with desires. Now we're going to speak about, is the world an illusion? Ashraf, nice to see you. Good to have you with us. I hope you're all doing well, every one of you. Please let me know where you are today. I'd like to see who is in the chat. Remember, super chats are on as well. Super chats are on, so super chats will be answered immediately and obviously contribute to the channel. Yes. So, is the world an illusion? All right. So, the devotee asks Ramana, Sri Bhagavan, Sri Bhagavan often says that Maya, illusion, and reality are the same. How can that be? Now, again, Maya here, you got to remember the illusion of measurement. Now, look, guys, I know I speak about it all the time, but I have to reinforce that mentality because some people will think, it's the illusion, like, I can put my hand through a wall. And there's a lot of people that try to equate Eastern spirituality and philosophy with something like quantum physics. And in a lot of sense, they are very far apart. And we see a lot of that now also with simulation theory, where a lot of people will try to equate it with Eastern philosophy and spirituality. For whatever reason, in the modern day, we have this tendency to try and make everything universal. So there's this real radical universalism. And, in a lot of sense, things are different. That's what diversity is. That's how we can understand from things. But the irony is, in the modern world, we're trying to champion diversity by making things the same, which is paradoxical. Oh, who we got here? New Jersey in the house. Got California, Violet. Nice to see you. Anek, Slovenia. Love it. Bree, Australia. There you go. Alethea, Lake Placid. Edmonton in the house. Hey, Seth, how are you? Indiana. Thank you, Cameron. So, as I said, the devotee says that Bhagavan says that Maya and reality are the same. How can that be? Ella, Norway, good to see you. Melissa, Oklahoma, beautiful. Michael, early, Toronto. Well, it must be early, yeah. Sorry, guys. I've been trying to find a good time for everyone to attend, and there is no ideal time. I mean, it's fairly late here in Thailand, but I'm in for the long haul. I love seeing you guys, and look, I apologize. I haven't done a live stream in forever. Like, actually, I didn't do even one live stream this year, if you can believe it. I was dumbfounded when I was looking at my content in YouTube the other day. I was thinking, wow, the last live stream was actually August 2022. Crazy. Next year, I'm going to probably start a fortnightly, which will go fortnightly with the podcast with Guy Young, a fortnightly live stream on a Sunday morning. Let me know if that's something that you guys would be interested in. So I really would like to connect more with you guys and, Yes. All right. Thank you. Thank you, John, Anek, Jersey. Love it. So, guys, yes, Bhagavan often says that Maya and reality are the same. How can that be? Well, Shankara, and then Ramana actually says, Shankaracharya was criticized for his views on Maya without being understood. He said that Brahman is real, the universe is unreal, and the universe is Brahman. Now, I've done many videos on this, and in Sanskrit, actually, this is Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya. Now, what Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya means is that all is Brahman, the world is an appearance. Now, you'll understand that a bit more as I go further on. And look, I've explained it ad nauseum with you guys on the channel. And I know a lot of you have probably understood it, but it's something we should always talk about because Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya is one of the core Sanskrit phrases that helps you understand outside of the Mahavakyas, helps you understand the the nature of the ultimate reality. So Ramana continues. Shankara did not stop at the second line. So the second line was the universe is unreal. And the third line obviously was, and the universe is Brahman. Ramana continues, because the third explains the other two. It signifies as real if perceived as the self, and unreal if perceived apart from the self. Hence, Maya and reality are one and the same. And so the devotee says, so the world is not really illusory? Ramana says, at the level of the spiritual seeker, you have got to say that the world is an illusion. So here he's addressing most of us as spiritual aspirants. So using the idea that the world is an illusion, not in the sense that Ramana understands that the world is not, he understands it's all Brahman, but using it as a tool to evoke a deeper understanding. So Ramana continues, there is no other way. So when a man forgets that he is Brahman, who is real, permanent, and omnipresent, and deludes himself into thinking that he is a body in the universe, which is filled with bodies that are transitory and labors under that delusion, you have got to remind him that the world is unreal and a delusion. Why? Because this vision, which has forgotten its own self, is dwelling in the external, material universe. It will not turn inwards into introspection unless you impress on him that all this external material universe is unreal. When once he realizes his own self, he will know that there is nothing other than his own self, and he will come to look upon the whole universe as Brahman. There is no universe without the self. So long as a man does not see the self, which is the origin of all, but looks only at the external world as real and permanent, you have to tell him that all this external universe is an illusion. You cannot help it. Take a paper. We see only the script, and nobody notices the paper on which the script is written. The paper is there, whether the script on it is there or not. On the script as real, you have to say that it is unreal and illusion, since it rests upon the paper. The wise man looks upon both the paper and the script as one. So also with Brahman and the universe. The devotee follows up. So the world is real when it is experienced as the self, the Atman, and unreal when it is seen as separate names and form, nama rupa. Ramana says, just as fire is obscured by smoke and the shining light of consciousness is obscured by the assemblage of names and forms, the world, when by compassionate divine grace the mind becomes clear, the nature of the world will be known to be not the illusory forms, but only the reality. Only those people whose minds are devoid of the evil power of Maya, having given up the knowledge of the world and being unattached to it, and having thereby attained the knowledge of the self-shining supreme reality, can correctly know the meaning of the statement, the world is real. If one's outlook has been transformed to the nature of real knowledge, the world of the five elements, beginning with ether, Akash, will be real, being the supreme reality, which is the nature of knowledge. The original state of the empty world, which is bewildering and crowded with many names and forms, is bliss, which is one, just as the egg yolk of the multicolored peacock is only one. Know this truth by abiding in the state of self. And then the devotee continues, I cannot say it is all clear to me. Is the world that is seen, felt, and sensed by us in so many ways something like a dream, an illusion? Ramana says, There is no alternative for you but to accept the world as unreal if you are seeking the truth and the truth alone. The devotee says, why so? Ramana says, for the simple reason that unless you give up the idea that the world is real, your mind will always be after it. If you take the appearance to be real, you will never know the real itself, although it is the real alone that exists. This point is illustrated by the analogy of the snake and snake in the rope. You may be deceived into believing that a piece of rope is a snake. While you imagine that the rope is a snake, you cannot see the rope as a rope. The non existent snake becomes real to you, while the real rope seems wholly non existent as such. And so that's an important metaphor, right? The rope and the snake analogy. You guys know I often use this metaphor a lot. I mean, Ramana is using a bunch in what we're reading at the moment. Like he uses the text and the paper, right? So like we forget the paper, but we read the script. I mean, even then I'm reading the script, right? I'm reading the words on the paper, and you momentarily forget the paper, right? Because you're engrossed in the script, and so that's one of the things, right? Like we're so involved in this linguistic framework we have in our mind. So with this linguistic framework, we project that onto the world around us. And then we suffer accordingly the if the world doesn't accord to the names and forms that we've ascribed them. And so that's one of the big problems. And on the spiritual path, it's about cleansing that linguistic framework. It doesn't mean you become a mute and you don't speak, obviously not. But it means you're not stuck or caught in the concepts and the names and even the forms that you've ascribed the world around you. You are free from that. And so then that you can have the mind of Zhuangzi, for example, Xiao Yao Yu, you can have the free and easy wandering mindset where you're not caught in this or that. Things can happen around you. Someone can say something to you, and it will be like wind just blowing through you. And so, if only we were taught about the rope and the snake when we were a child. And so, that's why that phrase, Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya, is one of the most important phrases in all of world literature. Because Brahman is real, the universe is unreal, and the universe is Brahman. It's a paradoxical statement, but it's taking you through the whole gamut of understanding reality. It's like the Zen verse of Tozan in Zen, where Tozan said, before enlightenment, the mountain was a mountain, the lake was a lake. I got confused. I searched for enlightenment. The mountain was a lake, the lake was a mountain. After enlightenment, the mountain was a mountain, the lake was a lake. In typical Zen paradoxical fashion, it's a similar sentiment as to Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya, because Tozan experienced reality as a certain way, and then he believed in a type of way of developing himself, a way of understanding the world, which flipped everything on its head. But then he realized that fundamental nature was already what it is before his enlightenment. It's, again, it's like the chopping wood and carrying water metaphor. And so the universe is unreal when we are looking at it from the perspective of name and form. When we're looking at it from the perspective of probably the last two, spiritual aspirants that Bhagavan was talking about. And so ultimately, Brahman is real, right? So if Brahman is real, the universe can only be real if perceived as Brahman, if perceived in its one natural unity, actually. And you often hear Krishnamurti talking about this when he talks about that the identity is limited, because the identity operates from a state of limits. So it dissects the world up into this and that according to its own limitation. And the role, according to Krishnamurti, which coincides with the Eastern spiritual traditions, is we need to have that real sense of wholeness, that real sense of unity. Not as lip service, not as you read it in a book, you wrote it down, but as an actual reality for yourself. You actually experience and feel. Experience, again, is probably the wrong word, because experience implies object, subject. But a real knowing in the core of your being that oneness is the true reality. And that's what Krishnamurti was talking about. But you can't understand that oneness is the true reality when you come and you operate from that limited identity. And so the last part before I open it up to questions, I want to speak to you guys about, and Ramana's teachings, is the world created for happiness or misery? I'm pretty sure that you guys can answer this one. But Ramana's got a really good, great perspective on this. Who we got in the house? MJ, good to see you. Shane, nice work. Lee, good to see you. Lord, Germany, 2 p.m. Beautiful. The Way of the Jedi, New Zealand, 2 a.m. Wow. Thanks for staying up, my friend. I highly appreciate it. 2 a.m. All right. Is the world created for happiness or misery? So the devotee goes right into this, right? Is the world created for happiness or misery? Ramana says, again, typical Ramana fashion, creation is neither good nor bad. It is as it is. It is the human mind which puts all sorts of constructions on it, seeing things from its own angle and interpreting them to suit its own interests. A woman is just a woman, but one mind calls her mother, another sister, and still another aunt, and so on. Men love women, hate snakes, and are indifferent to the grass and the stones by the roadside. These value judgments are the cause of all the misery in the world. Creation is like a peepal tree. Birds come to eat its fruit or take shelter under its branches. Men cool themselves in its shade, but some may hang themselves on it. Yet the tree continues to lead its quiet life, unconcerned with and unaware of all the uses it is put to. It is the human mind that creates its own difficulties and then cries for help. Is God so partial as to give peace to one person and sorrow to another? In creation, there is room for everything, but man refuses to see the good, the healthy, and the beautiful. Instead, he goes on whining like the hungry man who sits beside the tasty dish and who, instead of stretching out his hand to satisfy his hunger, goes on lamenting. Whose fault is it? God's or man's? The devotee says, if God is all, why does the individual suffer for his actions? Are not the actions for which the individual is made to suffer prompted by him? Bhagavan says, he who thinks he is the doer is also the sufferer. The devotee replies, but the actions are prompted by God, and the individual is only his tool. Bhagavan replies, this logic is applied only when one suffers, but not when one rejoices. If the conviction prevails always, there will be no suffering either. The devotee replies, when will the suffering cease? Bhagavan says, not until individuality is lost. If both the good and bad actions are his, why should you think that the enjoyment and suffering are yours alone? He who does good or bad also enjoys pleasure or suffers pain. Leave it there and do not superimpose suffering on yourself. The devotee then replies, how can you say that suffering is non existent? I see it everywhere. Ramana says, one's own reality, which shines within everyone as the heart, is itself the ocean of unalloyed bliss. Therefore, like the unreal blueness of the sky, misery does not exist in reality, but only in mere imagination. Since one's own reality, which is the son of jnana, knowledge or wisdom, that cannot be approached by the dark delusion of ignorance, itself shines as happiness. Misery is nothing but an illusion caused by the unreal sense of individuality. In truth, no one has ever experienced any such thing other than that unreal illusion. If one scrutinizes one's own self, which is bliss, there will be no misery at all in one's life. One suffers because the idea that the body, which is never oneself, is I. Suffering is all due to this delusion. I just love that verse. I just absolutely love that verse. And that dialogue, I should say. Unreal blueness of the sky, misery does not exist in reality, but only in mere imagination. And so, as I was speaking, for those of you who were here at the beginning, the Ramana's mentality, not mentality, but the mental attitude needed to understand the deeper knowledge that we spoke about in the Divai Kolotterum is to get out of this understanding of right and wrong, good and bad. These are subjective perspectives that are based on our conditioning. Now, you will be dedicated to understanding that if you're dedicated to the spiritual path. A lot of people will make justifications or cop-outs to try and justify their own view of the world. They may be an activist, for example, so they try to justify their own subjective viewpoint. They're not made for the spiritual path. It's just the way it is. It's just the way it is. And so creation is neither good nor bad. Now, this is an Eastern spiritual and philosophical perspective across the board. Because good and bad equate to a subjective viewpoint based on a culture or an individual's sense of morality. Now, we are fundamentally natural and we are fundamentally good, but we learn about a world that doesn't exist. And so I remember a teacher said to me a long time ago, and when I was younger, I didn't quite grasp it, when he said, the whole world is mind. And, you could think, oh, okay, the whole world is mind. Like, what are we talking about here? The subatomic reality, quantum physics, No. He purely meant that everything in the world is a manifestation of someone's idea of what the world should be. And we are existing in that. And so some things are good, right? It's not to say that anything is not meant to be, but the way society and culture has developed, you can tell it's a manifestation of the mind, right? You can go to certain places in the world and you can tell it's a manifestation of the spirit. And so these texts, these dialogues, everything I'm talking to you about today is a manifestation of that unmanifest world. It's the unmanifest manifest. Whereas what goes on in the world, the artificial desires, like we were speaking about, are manifestations of the mind. And unfortunately, we all live in that world. And sometimes we've always lived in that sort of world, but it's become more prevalent and it's expanded a lot due to, the evolution of the species and the evolution of technology and the evolution of everything, right? So And that's why, if you look at reality in a sense, that if you accept that we're in the Kali Yuga and you accept that majority of humanity have and or are in the process of turning their back on the true nature of reality because they're so invested in their own individualistic plight in life, then you'll understand that we are truly in the Kali Yuga, that these texts and what you and I are talking about today are exactly what was said when Vyas left the great knowledge behind when he wrote the Puranas, uh, when he wrote the Mahabharata, all of these great texts for the spiritual starved in the Kali Yuga. I mean, if we take that as a true story, it was very intuitive and perceptive of him. And we are all, living in the grace of great teachers such as him and Ramana as well, that have left all of this knowledge behind for us, and they're no longer with us. And we have all this great knowledge to discuss. And, it just means the most to me anyway. And I know it probably means the most to a lot of you as well. And I know that a lot of people on my channel are dedicated and to this knowledge and an understanding that possibly we're in the Kali Yuga, and maybe our role in the Kali Yuga is to keep this knowledge alive, and to, not in the sense that we are going to promote it or we're going to hit the streets and hand out pamphlets like a Jehovah Witness, but keep it alive with the people who know, the Sangha. I often like to call all of you the Shanti Sangha. And so the Shanti Sangha is always growing every day, but there's many Sanghas around the world that we're keeping this knowledge alive. So anyway, there's so much I could talk about Ramana's teachings in here. And as I mentioned before, those who are new have come late. We've discussed the Ishvara Gita, the Parayana, the poetic works of Bhagavan, and also Be As You Are, the teachings of Sri Ramana Maharshi, edited by David Godman. And so that's that. Om Namo Bhagavan Ramana. Guys, let's have a look at the chat. We'll take some questions now. Take some questions for a half an hour, and then I'll have to let some of my friends go to bed. Where are the Jedi? Let's have a look. Reg, good to see you. Morpheus, nice to see you. Guys, 101 likes, 76 in the room. Let's try and get it to 200 likes. Yeah? Lee, for whom is the enlightenment? Exactly. It's not for the person. The person can't experience enlightenment. Enlightenment happens when that jiva has been removed out of the equation. The jiva, the persona system, is like a dam in the river. But the difference is that if one, in this localization of consciousness, is blessed to come back into abidance with Brahman or Tao, if you will, then the person will continue to function, because that's just a localization of consciousness doing whatever it needs to do. But you've come back into harmony with the fundamental consciousness, that non-dual pure consciousness. And so then this body will live out its existence, this body-mind, in a very graceful way, and in a way that resonates with the all. And that's it. That's the story of Arjuna and Krishna, right? Arjuna doesn't want to go to war against his cousins in the war of Kurukshetra in the Bhagavad Gita. And Krishna says to Arjuna, this is your dharma. You're a Kshatriya. And as a Kshatriya, you're a warrior. And so what warriors need to do is they need to fulfill their duty. That's what Dharma is. And so as individuals, we all have our own duty in life to continue the survival of the species. And that's our role. That really is our role, to continue the survival of the species and fulfill our duty as a person. But that can only be done to its nth degree if we understand who we truly are. And so Krishna's advice to Arjuna was nishkarma karma. And nishkarma karma means not being attached to the fruits of one's actions. That's what it means. And so Arjuna went into battle, and that's the moral of the story. He's merged with, in this sense, Krishna, which is a representation of Vishnu, Vishnu being a representation of Brahman, the ultimate reality, and fulfilled his dharma, fulfilled his duty. And that's really what we're all doing in some sense. But when the ego steps in, the ego thinks it's conquering this and doing this and that, and it has a lot of pride, a great sense of pride. The ego does when it attains something. But then even when you look at it logically, there's a lot of things that have to happen for a lot of things to work in your life, right? So if something has to happen, then there's a lot of other pieces that have to fall into place. That's out of your power. I look at myself, right? For example, when a publisher has to accept or wants to accept one of my books, it's a grueling process as a writer. So it's in their hands. They may not like it. You may be with someone. You may wait months, years. Effortless Living, for example, I wrote that in a small, hot apartment in Seoul, in Korea, in 2013. Wasn't published until 2018. Patience is the name of the game. But I see a lot of things have got to come into place. A lot of things have got to merge and fit. And once the pieces fit, then that's what produces the things in your life. Let's have a look. Sea of Platitudes. Beautiful. Nisargadatta said, it is the consciousness that is liberated. There is no entity. That's right. It's the jar analogy, right? And you guys heard me before speak about Rigpa and Dhammadhatu in Dzogchen. So the jar analogy that's often used in the Nididhyasana text, so particularly the Avadhuta Gita, the Ashtavakra Gita, and the Mandukya Upanishad Kataka, is basically that within the jar, there's space, right? But what's outside of the jar? So smash the jar. You smash the jar. The space in the jar is not different than the space outside the jar, but it was trapped. This is Nisargadatta's point. So consciousness is liberated. It's not in the jar of the jiva anymore, or the jar of the ego. It's not imprisoned by this jar, in air quotes, because you've down-regulated the jiva. And as Way of the Jedi mentions, not all ego is bad. And again, we're not demonizing ego here. We're talking about the spiritual aspects and what is required to come back into the undifferentiated consciousness. Ego at its fundamental level is an interface with reality. Now, the problem is that we attach and we believe in the interface. So we think we are the interface with reality. But it's just an interface, right? I need Jason to function and be healthy and sane and funny if he's funny, who knows? But to build harmony with other beings, it's essential. But often cases that you can only allow that to your nature to be as it actually is. And here, I mean the nature of your ego. If you've done the spiritual work to down-regulate the ego so that the real sort of you can shine forth. And so to speak about that, like a good concept is Li, in Taoism. So Li in Taoism is the organic pattern. Now, if we translate Li into English, again, in Chinese, they have really beautiful ways of explaining things. Li is translated as the markings of jade, the grain of wood, and the fiber and muscle. So it's that pattern, that organic pattern that is in the world. And so each of us as a human being, it's not talking about the fiber in our muscle. It's not talking about the nerve fibers in our being. It's talking about the pattern that we have in our heart mind. So we have a certain pattern, right? My organic pattern may be teaching Eastern philosophy and spirituality, speaking to you guys about this, writing about it, because it feels like that's what resonates, right? So, and each of you understand this as well, right? You might find that maybe you're a good painter, or maybe you're just brilliant at your job, whatever that may be. That might be your lead. That might be your organic pattern. And often the way that we understand that is when there is a second effect, which is yin. Yin in Chinese means mutual interdependence and harmonic resonance. So the best way to explain that is a musician follows their li, let's say, and the musician is just brilliant. The Tao is just moving through. And what is the yin? The attraction. The people come to listen, to feel the virtue of the musician. Here is that the musician has kind of let go of this rigid personality that they've had to allow the river's power to become their power. That's what is. The Tao's power becomes your power. And so that's what happened with Ramana. Ramana let go. His actually is a Gyani. And that's what attracted people to him. People came from Europe back then. There was no Facebook. There was no YouTube. But somehow Paul Brunton knew about Ramana and jumped on a boat. The rest is history. So never underestimate that power, right? And so from that perspective, yes, our Li defines us as an individual, but only as a piece of life. That's the mistake, is when we start to think we are the life, right? But we are a piece of the universe. The universe is doing us, we aren't doing it. But we think we are running the show. We don't run the show at all. Tao, Brahman runs the show. So Li says form is emptiness, emptiness is form. This is true. But again, when you look at shunyata, you have to remember it's empty cognizance. So thoughts, emotions, everything is up. Their nature is empty, because the true nature of the mind is empty, spontaneous, and free. That's the true nature of the mind. The problem is we try to fix the mind. That's the mind's tendency, is to try and fix itself. But its fundamental nature is empty, spontaneous, and free. Dhammadhatu is the space that holds the universe together. And so Rigpa is the total presence, the identical aspect, the microcosm of the Dhammadhatu in our consciousness. But it's space. It's pure empty cognizance. And when we bring our mind, see again, when we bring our awareness back into that heart of that Rigpa state of total presence, where you're not trying to control your mind, but it comes back and you can experience reality without trying to suppress thoughts or trying to move thoughts away or wandering with the thoughts, but you see them as what they are, empty cognizance, shunyata. And it's amazing what happens from that perspective. And look, that in no way is different from Advaita Vedanta or even Taoism. They all have the same perspective of thoughts. And so, guys, if you got any more questions, we've got 10 minutes left, 15 minutes left, let's say. Let's shoot off some rapid fire questions. Before we get there, I want to speak to you about what's happening next year. Obviously, plenty more videos on the channel. I've got a documentary in the furnace. It's cooking away. Still trying to get my new book published. Had offers. It's been a slow process, let's put it that way. Publishing in America has been affected by, let's say, the political landscape in America. And as always, the publishers in America think that everywhere is America, but everywhere is not America. So, and in saying that, as you know, my new book on Taoism obviously is not politically correct. So that has been part of the challenge. Whereas I wrote about this 10 years ago, easy to get published. So make of it what you will. In February, I've got a tour with a wonderful group going to northern India. We're going to do the Footsteps of the Buddha tour. And after that, I'll contemplate other tours and I'll let you guys know. As I mentioned before, I'm thinking about the fortnightly live stream like this. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. I've been thinking about that for a long time. So let me know if you think that's a good idea. And apart from that, I will probably start working on a new book. And just there is a lot of content on the way. Guys, you don't even want to know how much content I've recorded recently. And so there's been a lot of editing going on and so forth and so on. There's another thing I've been thinking about. I don't know, much about shorts, short videos. Who in the chat watches short videos? I mean, as you know, I'm personally, I'm not a big fan of short content, but I thought, maybe I could put one out a week or something like that. Obviously not make it something that's prevalent on the channel. And okay, people watch shorts. This is good. Morpheus should consider self-publishing. Now, self-publishing is probably not the way to go, my friend. I've published, all of my books have been trade back published. So, and self-publishing, though a good idea, doesn't reach many people, unfortunately. I wish I had more news on that, but it's just not the way it is. Hackett, you don't. MJ, yes, you watch shorts. What else we got? Some comments, I don't know if they're related to the chat. Anyway, shorts are for fast consumers, borderline. How are you? Yeah. I'm not sure if I would. I'm going to try probably a couple, but we will see, and we'll go from there. Jason, are you from the US? No, I'm not. I'm from Australia. Prefer longer ones. Yeah, well, I'm not the same. I prefer longer content. Look, the longer content is going to continue. The way that I'm sort of scheduling the channel at the moment is the podcast with Guy Young is fortnightly, and I have a solo video every Wednesday. So make sure you guys put that in the notification. Make sure you remember that's sort of the way we're going. So Wednesday morning US time. Every week is a solo video. Sunday morning fortnightly is the podcast. So that's how we're going to be scheduling the channel going forward. And obviously fortnightly, I want to do like a fortnightly recap, maybe a session like what we've had today to talk about these matters. And maybe I'll have some sort of lecture format ready like I had today where we can talk about some of the great teachings. As I said, the live streams I don't keep up because they are exclusively for Patreon, the replay of the live stream. So an hour after this live stream is up, it'll be exclusive to Patreon. So hopefully you guys can support the channel and my work by becoming a Patreon member. I would highly appreciate that. And you can watch the replay and everything we've spoke about. And I hope actually that you guys got a lot out of what I spoke about today about Bhagavan's teachings. Because it means a lot to me, the teachings, you know what I mean? So, and it means a lot to connect with all of you. You know, I've been teaching Eastern philosophy and spirituality for a long time now, but only been regular on YouTube since probably 2017. So, and not many people found my channel until around 2019. So, let's have a look in the chat. Yeah, I know, borderline. I know, AD. Good to see you, my friend. MJ, I prefer longer ones as divine context is also important, no doubt. John Tar, I watch and make shorts. Oh, there you go. The people love shorter content. No one can focus anymore. True that. Pavel, it's crazy these shorts addicting, but spiritual content should be awesome. Could attract more viewers. Thanks for your input, Pavel. I appreciate you, brother. See, Pavel's a member of Patreon. Long time member. Only love and appreciation for Pavel. Shane, hello, Jason. What do you do in simple terms? Do you do apart from meditation to experience the present now, everyday practical stuff? Just like you, my friend, just like you, brother. There's no difference. I live my life like any normal person. It's not extravagant. You know, I think that that's probably a projection, particularly Westerners have. Like they might think of a sage, for example, right? And they might think, oh, man, they must just meditate, levitate all day. And look, I've been around some very powerful people in my time, even, you know, great gurus and siddhas and all type of people. And in the end of the day, everyone's got to eat, sleep, and shit. It's just the nature of life. And so I just go about my day. I don't really have that many interests in movies or anything like that. Spend a lot of time with my wife. We know we like to go places, travel, hang out, uh, you know, eat good food, everything that probably you like to do, you know, in simple terms. So, as you said, for myself, it's really a dedication to the knowledge, and you know, there's always something I'm reading. You know, a big part of my life is study. So it's not that I wake up from dusk till dawn and I'm reading and meditating, but there's often something that I'm studying to further my understanding and also to help teach others as well. So, and part of the spiritual tradition is self study. Is part even if you look at Patanjali yoga, self study is one of the most important things. So a lot of people make a thing about meditation, about diet, and everything like that, but a lot of it can only have a deeper resonance when one studies. Like, for example, in the modern day, you find a lot of people, particularly in the West, who will just practice a certain diet, who will just practice meditation, and they're super moral, they're super activist, but they don't study, you know, and they don't have any deep framework of what they're trying to understand. And that's why they can be inactivists and stuff like that. Like which it runs counter to the Eastern spiritual and philosophical traditions. Super chat. Michael, thank you, my friend. Thank you for the wonderful live stream celebrating Bhagavan. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it. What else have we got here? Guys, 73 in the room, 110 likes. Let's pump it up. We got 10 more minutes. Anek, but best our podcast with Guy Young. Yes, that's right. Well, I like him too personally, but high tech Karen. How does one get to stability through spirituality? That's a really interesting question. I am making actually a few books on, from the Dzogchen perspective, which is part of Vajrayana Buddhism, about stability. Now, stability here in the sense of stability, having a stable mind. And so that's something that actually develops over time, where you're not sort of going here and there in your mind and you're not drawn into this or that, but you're steady. Your mind is not sharp, but equanimous. And so you have this contemplative state of mind where it's not thinking, but it's very present. And that's what that I know you're talking about stability through spirituality, maybe in another context, but that's the stability that I would be speaking about. What else we got? Jacob, short's a good introduction to short attention span, folks. The mass will get a taste before getting the whole nourishment. Yeah, I see your point. Borpheus, I'm pretty sure I missed all but the end of the stream. Don't worry. If you become a member at Patreon, you can watch the whole. And we did discuss a lot of quality things. AD, great to see you well. Good to see you, my friend. Craig, can enthusiasm for teachings of enlightenment fall away as they too seem to be a bit of a snare, causing you to think they have to be always talked about? I see where you're coming from. The only problem with that argument, and what I always point out to people, is what else are you going to do? Are you going to have enthusiasm for Netflix? Are you going to have enthusiasm for playing with your phone? I mean, I don't see what could be more important than what we're talking about. And it's not that we have to talk about it all the time, you know what I mean? Like, but having, again, what's one of the most important aspects of the spiritual path and following spirituality in general? What is that? A lot of you probably know, bodhicitta. And if you don't have bodhicitta, it's hard to progress on the path, because if you lose that enthusiasm, if you lose your high spirit for this knowledge, then you'll just start watching Netflix again. And then what happens, the next evolution of that is the non-dual police. And that's what happens to the non-dual police. They go around and they on the comment section telling others that they're idiots and they're all drawn into semantics and analytics. But then if you see those people in their ordinary life, they're eating Cheetos and watching Netflix. And I've seen it personally. So what else are you going to do? That's the question. So I think you need to build a life where you just live an ordinary life, but you have still that bodhicitta. And I actually have a video coming up either in next few weeks, I don't know when it's scheduled, but on bodhicitta and about having that enthusiasm for the path and keeping that enthusiasm and methods to do that. And not even methods to do that, right? But it's not that, like, you can't, if you lose that, what's the alternative? Because what you're talking about here is a difference between being drawn into the materialist world or the spiritual world. Now, if you've got a mind that's naturally drawn to the spiritual world, then that enthusiasm can never burn out. But if you've got a mind that has a tendency to, that new TV series is out, it's only 10 episodes. I could binge on that in one day. It's a big call. Seth, thank you for your awesome work. Enjoying the channel and content. Wishing you all the best. Seth, thank you, my friend. Ways of Jedi, great food in Thailand. No doubt, my friend, no doubt. Actually, today, I don't know who is on my Instagram. For those of you who aren't on my Instagram handle is at Jason Gregory author. And if you look at the Instagram story, Guy and I went to a South Indian breakfast place. So it was good to get a masala dosa and a masala chai again. I can't wait to get back to India. Hackett, I guess the most important thing out of all these books and all these words is to remember to go within and reflect on yourself objectively. True that. Ways of Jedi, well said. Thank you. Anek, we need experience, not just words. Yes, that's true. MJ Lakshmi, thank you. Shane, thanks, good man. Thank you, my friend. Hackett, do you think there's a significance in your age, Jason? When I turned 42 on 314, a quickening begin. All I could do is meditate and re-educate myself and surrender. Not so sure. I turned 43 next year, so 43. Wait, I'm on 43 now. I turn 44 next year. Please, time is getting ahead. Pavel, Cheetos can hit you hard. Yeah, well, that's true. Craig, living. I'm very ordinary. I watch Netflix and I still remain as I am. Spiritual versus natural don't exist. Well, continue to watch Netflix. Enjoy. Again, this is what I mean with that's again a non-dualist, a non-dual police response. It wasn't what I said was not meant to trigger you. Again, we can speak naturally and not be so offended. There is an eagerness to be offended these days, so keep me out of it. I'm 43. I'm not eager to be offended. As I said, Craig, enjoy Netflix, my friend, and continue to tell yourself that you're spiritual. Hayes, it is a lonely path to reside in the US. You are right on with our culture. I dwell inside. It's true. It's true. But at the same time, with all of what's going on in America, there must be a silver lining. It really has to be. Hayes, grateful for your channel like yours. You just never comment. Thank you. Hayes, beautiful. Nice to meet you. Tar, are you on TikTok? No, I'm not on TikTok. But guys, let me know. Should I be on TikTok? I spoke to a friend the other day and they said, you have to be on TikTok. And I'm like, God damn, I've never even opened I don't even know what it is. I know it's short content. And I know it's owned by the Chinese government, but Earth, it is amazing how we in India take time to spirituality, but non-Indians get into it without any prodding. I've seen that a lot actually in India, my friend. Yeah, I know. But in saying that, because I've spent many years in India, I've got many Indian friends who born and raised on the deeper essence. But at the same time, you go into Mumbai, you go into Delhi, you go to Calcutta, even Chennai, and the Dharma is everywhere in India, but there is sort of a social pull into business and into making money and this and that. And look, I entirely understand that for anyone, not just from the Indian perspective, but from anyone's perspective. So, but the great challenge is, how do we find a balance between that and also being sincere on the spiritual path? Shane, I prefer cheese balls when on the dark side. Cheese balls are good. Ways of Jedi, Netflix killed good movies, no doubt. Hardly any good true stories come out these days. Still no movie on Mao Revolution. Well, problem with movies these days, as you guys know, if you've seen my video from a couple of years ago, why you should never watch Hollywood. I can't remember how I titled the video, but the movie industry in Hollywood in general has a political agenda, and they are going to keep pushing that until they become broke. John, TikTok lets you go to 10 minutes now. Well, I never knew. Alethea, oh my God, it's a cesspool. Yes, TikTok is great for sales. You should capitalize. Ricky, I have a question that needs some clarification. This might have already been answered, so bear with me. What puzzles me are the many people who have had a near-death experience. How does their experience relate to Ramana Maharshi's teaching? That's an interesting question, Ricky. And it only relates in the sense that you could say, you could use the NDE, the near-death experience, as the experience of what the ego had in dying, right? Because from Ramana's perspective, the Atman, the undifferentiated consciousness, was never born and can never die. It is that one undifferentiated consciousness that is Brahman, the ultimate reality. So a lot of times when we have a near-death experience, it is only the ego or the jiva, the persona system, that is going through that process. And I don't know if you guys, who has, like, please let me know who has read the Tibetan Book of the Dead. But if you read the Tibetan Book of the Dead and you read about these skilled masters who would go into the Bardo realm. So in the Bardo realm, the way it is sort of constituted by 3 phases. And so the first phase is straight after death, right? So straight after death, there's a time and that first phase is complete neutral nothingness, right? So it's like, poof, you're in this space, air quotes. Second phase is, like, we could say almost like purgatory, where you're in the second phase and all of your karma. So when I say karma here, I'm talking about your vasanas, your habitual tendencies, and also your samskaras. So the samskaras are the mental impressions and subliminal imprints that one has in the subconscious, right? So if you haven't done this is, again, from the Tibetan Buddhist perspective, from the Tibetan Book of the Dead. If you haven't done the spiritual work, then you will when you get to the second phase, then the energy, the vibration begins to be heavy. And so what happens when it's heavy is in the third phase can go one of 2 ways. If you've done the training to be observant of that heavy vibration of the jiva, then liberation is possible. Then you're gone. But if the vibration is too believable or is too powerful, then you'll find yourself back in the womb. And so there's this 3-pronged process, right? And so why I mentioned that is that when you go into the after the death realm, whatever your ego has been trained to believe, right? Like, say, for example, you have all, like, I don't know who has read Michael Talbot's book, uh, The Holographic Universe. So certain traditions like uh, Christianity might have a view of going down a tunnel, right, and death. Uh, Islam might have a view of crossing a bridge or something of this nature, right? And so when a death experience comes, they have this experience in the near death experience as they're entering the before they enter that first stage of the bardo realm. But because it's still the ego having that experience, the ego is not uh, going to because it's having that experience. It's not going to die. It's just a near death experience. It's this experience of the conditioning coming close, pressing up to that first phase of the bardo. And a lot of the times the Tibetans will say that the near death experience is it's kind of uh, doesn't happen when you actually really do die. So when you actually really do die, boom, you're into that first stage. There's no warm up. There's no warm up act. You know, you just boom, you're straight into the first bardo phase. There has been no like, unless you have gone through a long process of dying, then you can experience that. Like, for example, you've probably all seen or heard of experiences of monks, but particularly Tibetan Buddhist monks who have been training their awareness so much that when they enter that first phase, uh, they are technically dead, but there's something there that's still alive. Like, I forget how they test this, and there's an awareness still there somehow, but the body is decaying, and so but the body is preserved more than an ordinary person who has died, if that makes sense. So I don't know why I mentioned that. I guess is because that the near-death experience is still infused with the ego, and from Ramana's perspective, the ego itself is an illusion. So all you ever are is Atman. So all you ever are really is that third phase of the Bardo realm, but in the non-dualist perspective, not in the one that goes back into the womb, but the one that goes into the light, however you want to perceive that. And so that's that process. And so Ramana would say that, again, who is the one that's experiencing the near-death experience? Because the Atman itself is undifferentiated consciousness. It doesn't matter if light, if it's dark, if you're having a near-death experience, if you're eating Cheetos, if you're in that state. See, state's even not a right word, but we're handicapped with language here. So if we're in that state, then the experiences can happen, but they don't stick in you, right? So, and this is what the fourth state of consciousness is in Advaita Vedanta, which is Turiya. So Turiya is non-experiential, but the waking state, the dreaming state, and a deep dreamless state are experiential. First of all, the deep dreamless state, people would say, well, how's that experiential? But you can report about it after the fact. That's what they say in the text. But if you can report about it after the fact, then it was an actual experience of nothing, of dreamlessness. But Turiya is a non-experiential state. So Nishant, almost everybody here. All right. Aaron, great to see you. Earth, great to see you. Great to see both of you. Yes, AD, ND is part of Maya. Yes, that's true. Hackett says that NDE lets you know you're much more than part of this body. That's for sure. Johnsky, I'm a little behind. Had a phone call. Netflix is mental programming, no doubt about it. Thanks for all you do, Jason. Found your content back in 2020. Ways of the Jedi, 880. Nice to see you again. Yeah, awesome. Two NDE and 2017, Lee. That's interesting. Hackett, right. Dying before you die physically. That's part of the name of the game, isn't it? Ricky, thank you, Jason. You are the first teacher to explain this. Thank you, brother. Love the live stream. Thank you. Nishant, is Satori and Samadhi same or similar? Similar, not same. Well, Satori is sudden. And there are different aspects of Samadhi, right? So we have Nirvikalpa Samadhi, Savikalpa Samadhi. Savikalpa is still when there is the awareness of the subject-object split. Nirvikalpa is the complete absorption in the ultimate. So, and again, right? So Nirvikalpa, Nirguna, Nirvana. So again, qualityless. And so in Satori is from that perspective would be the Nirvikalpa perspective. But again, philosophically, it's framed differently and explained differently between Sanskrit and Japanese. So it's more of a sudden enlightenment. It's better to probably relate Satori to maybe moksha. Lee, thank you. You are an inspiration. Thank you, my friend. Love and appreciate you. Pavel, I wish you success in all your endeavors, Jason. Thank you, brother. Much love from Europe. Love it. See you on some tour this or next year. I'd love to see you, Pavel. Awesome. MJ, yes, Turia is ineffable. Beautiful. And let's just say the direct knowing. That's right. Guys, thank you so much. Again, I love and appreciate all of you. I don't take it for granted. Seriously, I don't take it for granted. I know a lot of people on YouTube and that will BS and, this and that, but you guys know me. That's not my style. So just really, I love and appreciate you all. Even the people who hate me, and I love you guys too, whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm so thankful to be back in contact with you guys. And so, like I said, I want to make this live stream a bit more regular and, see how it goes in the future, and maybe at a different time. Guys, let me know if this was a good time frame for you. Just let me know yes or no. I know in New Zealand, it's not a good time frame, obviously, but let me know what a good time is for you guys. Like, is it in the morning, say in North America, or nighttime? Is it morning in New Zealand is good, or what's good for all of you? Let me know what's good. A lot of people say yes. Anek, I appreciate you too. Love and appreciate you. John, namaskaram. Thank you. Melissa, love you too. Nishan, Joshi, thank you. Len. From the Acadian forest. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Thank you, Permaculture Charles. Yes, Seth says it's good. Good time. Joshi says it's good. Belgium, 3:51 here. That's not too bad, I guess. Northeast USA, yes. 3 a.m. after PSR. So 3, yeah, that's Pacific time. MJ, I'm grateful too, my friend. Thank you. Thank you so much. Phoenix. Yep, it's good time. Oh, that's good. Bless you, Anek. I hope you guys all had a good time. Lyle, there you are. Thank you. This is good time. I hope you enjoyed. Hayes, whenever is good. All right, awesome, man. Ian, if you do shorts, I'll watch them. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May all beings be free. What a lovely comment, Ian. Thank you. Amazing people from all over. Guys, I'm telling you, I got the best audience in the world. I'm telling you, it's the best. The most sincere bunch of people I've ever seen. And the most genuine too, like most down to earth. And Guy and I talk about this often. I think the people that find my channel are as we are. It's almost like meeting brothers and sisters. So it, like I said, chokes me up sometimes thinking about you guys. And look, I know you watch other content creators and other people on YouTube, but I just want to let you know that we don't take it for granted. So, and Guyang sends her best to all of you. She's having a relaxing time. So, UK Shane 222, good time. Awesome, man. Ian, love from the Blue Mountains in Oz. Awesome. There you go. It's late over there, Ian, that's for sure. Hackett, yeah, who else agrees that it sucks that this is ending? This was fun, wasn't it? Hackett, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Guys, I wish I could stay all night. Seriously, I love and appreciate you all. Thank you so much. Tomorrow, new podcast out. Make sure you watch tomorrow. It'll be out tomorrow morning. And Wednesday, new video. And guys, thank you so much. Thank you, Melissa. Ricky, thank you. Your efforts have helped all who wish to learn. Thank you. Pavel, love you, brother. Joshi, thank you. Love you too, man. Love you, AD. Awesome, man. Vishan, this is a virtual satsang. Thank you, my brother. Hackett, my notifications are on. Thank you. Awesome, man. See you all. And I'll speak to you. Actually, I'll speak to all you guys in the next live stream. Remember, if you want to become a member of Patreon and watch the replay, feel free to join. And I'll see you guys all there. Anek, thank you. I will say hi to her. Seth, thank you, brother. Awesome. Okay, guys. Bye. Shanti, 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 Shanti.